of the Laughter for All podcast. This is Comedian Nazareth, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for subscribing, and thank you for making us. This week we're number 40 in the top comedy podcast. So we're doing good. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing this with you. And it's so good to be with you guys. Just came off the road. I was in Detroit for a few days. Before that, I was in Green Bay. So it's so good to be with you guys and to be able to uh, introduce you to my friends who are able to lift you up, entertain you, but more than that, just pour into your life. And that's there's no exception today. I started this morning with a lot of. I was talking to Frigidaire, the company that sold me a dishwasher that is a lemon, and it just happened. I called them. I think their customer service put the word frigid in Frigidaire. They're just so cold and they don't care. And I called them. I said, "You guys came in 6 times. I think I got a lemon." They said, "Dishwashers are not a citrus." When someone tells you that, you know you're done. And he goes, "Oh, we're going to send another guy, another technician to look at it." I said, "You know what? I've had 5 technicians looking at it. Looking at it doesn't do anything to them. They just need a new optometrist because the way they looked at it, it didn't help. It didn't fix it. They keep looking at it. I can look at it." And they go, "What is the last guy told you about it?" I said, "He told me to eat out and buy paper plates." That's what he told me. So anyway, keep me in prayer because they're coming Monday again to look at my dishwasher. So keep that in prayer. All right. Right now, I've never had a race car driver on my show. So this is a first. He's also a pastor. He's also a wonderful, wonderful man with great stories. And God has just been using him and his wife in Washington State, one of the least church states in the country. Jeff and Melinda Knight became lead pastors of the Rock Church on February 6, 2000. We'll talk about how they became that way. And they were youth pastors, and then they became the senior pastors. And they're from Monroe, and they continue to pursue the vision to inspire purpose in this region and surrounding cities. His church is growing fast. They're having new buildings, and he's also, of course, he's a race car driver, and he has stories, and he almost died, and I saw the videos. So please welcome to the show my friend, Jeff Knight. Pastor Jeff, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, Nazareth? So good to see you, and thank you for the invitation.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time. You are so busy. You just sold your house and your
Yeah,
ranch. No, is that what happened?
we did. We sold our house, and we got moved here a couple weeks ago, and so we're just on a wild adventure. My wife and I never have a dull week. That's for sure.
Now you had a ranch, right?
Yeah. Had a ranch, raised some cattle, and have some horses. And man, I enjoy being outside, being outdoors, and being a little bit of country, and racing some cars, and I just enjoy life, and enjoy what God's doing with my family right now. It's really a great season.
What is it like to have a ranch and I know you of course you're not vegetarian when you have cattle.
No, that's for sure. Um, it's really kind of an organized mess, is what it is at all times. The cattle have to be fed, and the horses have to be fed and watered, and I have a 14-year-old daughter, and she loves animals, and my wife Melinda likes to raise chickens, and so we have some chickens with some eggs, and we got cats and dogs and horses and cattle, and it's a lot of fun, though. It's a ton of
And
fun.
you're still able to pastor a church with that.
Absolutely. I think sometimes, there's a scripture in Job that talks about letting the beasts of the field teach you something. And I'll tell you, I've had more encounters with the Lord sitting on the back of a horse, counting cows, and riding through the open spaces. It's a lot of fun. And I don't know, there's just something about the dirt. Dirt is a beautiful thing. So yeah, I love it.
We all came from dirt, just so it's really neat that I mean, I'm a city boy. I've never had my dream is to have a ranch and put horses and have, because my daughter loves horses and all that,
Yes.
and to have cattle. So I will be reaching out to you. But tell me, when did you feel like, you know what? Oh, first of all, as a race car driver, have you ever gotten a speeding ticket on real roads?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm the guy that I seem to get speeding tickets in clusters, like sometimes, 2 or 3 at a time in a short 6 or 7 week period, and then I just calm down again. I don't know.
What's the fastest you drove on regular roads, not racetracks?
Should I show that? Well, let's put it this way. My first car when I was 16, I went 132 in it. It was amazing.
Wow.
I've went
Now,
faster than that, but I went 132, so I'll stop there.
in your at age 16,
Yes, at age
and
16. So I wanted a 1983 Mazda RX-7 when I turned 16. And my dad was a muscle car guy from the 60s. And he
oh,
told me, he said, if you get a Mazda RX-7, you are going to go drive fast on the back roads and you're going to crash into a tree. And so he went out, he had a friend that had a 1969 RSSS Camaro, and that
ooh,
was my first car, and it had a big engine in it and a 4-speed. And my dad took me out and taught me how to drive it and do a burnout in it, because he said, if I don't teach you how to do this, you're going to go do it anyway and you're going to break it. And and so I was really pretty good with that car because I respected the horsepower and I respected the fact that it was such a neat car. And cars have always been a part of my life. My dad was a motorhead. I've been a motorhead. I often tell people my dad taught me how to race before he taught me how to pray. He got saved when I was 7 years old, and prior to that, he was a professional motocross racer. So he had bikes and cars and engines, and I just have never really gotten that out of my blood. Even though I love wide open spaces and some cows and some horses too.
that's amazing. Now, what do you race with? What kind of car do you race with?
So when I began racing, in I got involved in a team in 2001, and then 2006. My driver was retiring, and I said, well, if you're going to retire, what do I do with all this equipment? Because we had built a pretty cool race team. And he said, I think you should drive. And I said, what? Yeah, I'd never raced a car before. And one time I tried to drive the race car in practice, and it was a little bit of a handful. And he said, when we go to the fun track, he said, you race with me there and you pass me and we do all kinds of stuff. And he said, I think if you beat me at the fun track, you can drive one of these race cars. So lo and behold, 2006, I climbed behind the wheel of what's known as a super late model.
Super late model? What is that? A Chevy or what? What kind of car?
Yeah. So the type of car that I run is a Chevrolet, but the chassis is all fabricated. It's all custom. I race a race car produced by a company called Fury Race Cars back in North Carolina.
Wow. Now, how fast? What's the fastest you've gone on a track?
So the biggest track that I've been on in racing conditions, I've done some practice on some larger ones, but we go about 135 into the corner. It's not so much about the top speed as it is how fast you go through the corner. When you're turning left and you're headed south and you go north and you're going through the center of that corner at 100 plus miles an hour, and you're inches from other people. It's quite exhilarating.
Is it warm in the car? Is it?
Yeah, warm is an understatement. On a hot day, the temperatures can get into the 140s inside the car.
Now, what? Okay, so you started racing before you met Melinda or after your wife?
No, after I met Melinda.
And what does she thinks about you racing?
Oh, she, you know what? Melinda has always said, and always blessed anything I wanted to do. The one thing she requires is she just wants a good life insurance policy. True story.
Oh, she got that.
The only requirement. She's like, I want you to be happy. I want you to be who God created you to be. Just make sure if anything happens to you, I'm good. So,
but are you allowed to be insured? Are you able to be insured?
Yeah,
even as a race car driver.
you pay a higher premium. But yeah,
Hi.
yep,
It's, what scares you, Jeff?
nothing,
Nothing.
nothing, nothing. You know,
That's why you can
probably.
race.
Um, I think the thing about racing and the thing about fear is that fear creates a healthy respect for what we're doing. And so, you know, when I was 18 years old, I got my pilot's license. I wanted to be a pilot growing up, and I ended up in the ministry, and
Mm.
that's a different story. And it's all about preparation. And if you prepare right for whatever you're going into in life, though you're afraid, you don't, or though you have respect and honor for what you're about to do, you don't have to be afraid and fearful, because the fear is mitigated in the preparation.
Wow, I love this. The fear is mitigated in the preparation. You know that also works for comedy.
Does it
Whenever I have,
really?
oh yes, I'll tell you why. When we have, like, one time I did an event for 40,000 people. Now,
Okay.
40,000 people, that's scary, that's dangerous, and people
Yep.
don't know that because you have a big crowd like that and can turn on you. So what happened is, I learned that if I'm prepared exactly, I know exactly what I'm going to say. I'm not going to take any chance to try new stuff and do that. Then I'm less fearful because I'm
Good.
prepared. And
Yep.
that's what works. So now, how long does it, like, each, like, do you get, how many hours do you go on the track in a
Yeah.
regular race?
So I race kind of it's kind of the undercard for like the NASCAR series, like the trucks, and so I race locally in our region, Washington, Idaho, and so our races are anywhere from 50 laps to 200 laps. The 200 lap races, given the fact that it's more of the amateur ranks, it's kind of like the minor leagues in baseball.
Okay.
Um, Given the fact that the cleanup crews and all that are not as robust as, say, what we see on TV, it takes longer to clean up after a wreck. And so in like a 200 lap race, you can be in the car for 4 hours. Long time.
What
Yeah.
if you have to pee or something, or you don't?
Yeah. You just make sure that
You
you
don't have.
you do sometimes, but you literally, like a 200 lap race, you'll lose about 8 to 10 pounds, just because of sweating. So
8 to 10 pounds.
seldom do you have to pee, but it has happened, and I will admit that it's really hard to do it when you have your clothes on. It's really difficult. But
Ladies and
but you
gentlemen, you know what? You just said something gold. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to lose weight and Jenny Craig is not working for you, or just all these diets, keto is not a cut it. Why don't you get in a car and go
Yep.
200 laps at 130 miles an hour, and you can lose 8 to 10 pounds every time?
Yep.
So if you
Well,
race for a whole week,
the suits are 3 layers of fireproof material. Mine is made out of something called Nomex, and you sweat right through those. Like, they are almost wringing wet at the end of the race.
have
So when
you
people
ever?
come up to you to congratulate you and hug you, it's kind of
You're
like a wet
squishing.
kiss. Yeah, it's kind of like, yeah.
Okay, let me show. I want to show people the car that is. This your car?
Yeah, that's the car. That's the package that I ran in 2019 right there. I just really like that picture. It's one of my favorite pictures. And CW 11, the CW network was my sponsor that year, so I had the flash on my hood, and my daughter thought that
Oh,
was really cool.
that's a beautiful car. You know what? I always say it, if I was if I want to sponsor a race car for my business, I'll put them on the slower cars so people can read them when they go around.
Right.
But have you ever been in a major accident?
Quite a few, actually. I've been in a couple self-induced, and most of the time the crashes are a racing incident, because you're in close quarters and guys make mistakes, or you just kind of overdrive it and you have contact. But yeah, I've been in a couple. I have been in some pretty good wrecks, but probably the wreck that I'm most known for is in 2017. I was in a wreck with a very, very large fireball, ended up with some third degree burns on my neck. and literally experienced quite a moment right there. I'm a pastor, I know, and I got to keep it clean, but it was a WTF moment for sure.
I'll be able later to share the YouTube video where this happened. And
Yeah,
what happened? Your suit was is fireproof, right?
correct. But
That's that.
it caught on fire. What happened is I was running down. It was about lap 28 of a 150 lap race. We had a really, really good car, and the guy that qualified just ahead of me was right out in front of me, and I just made a decision that I was going to go for the lead on the next corner, which was turn one. We were coming down the front stretch, and I had a good run on him. The car was excellent, and all of a sudden my windshield was just covered with oil. And so two cars ahead of me, like if I was in sixth place, this car was in fourth, had blown an engine. His oil come out from under his car, covered the racetrack, covered my rival's car ahead of me, my car, come in through the window net, because there's just a net here and it's open.
Right.
And the oil got on my sleeve, and that's what caused my suit to catch on fire. I knew I was going into the fence. That's what we call the wall, because the track was so oily. And honestly, I was just trying to save my Chariot. These race cars are very, very technical, and when you get them right, you don't want to hurt them. Right. And I knew I was going to hurt it, because we're going to crash into a wall at about 135 miles an hour. So I just tried to go in with the back end, because the back end's easier to fix than the front end.
And you weren't worried about your front end and your face and your body.
You're trying to keep the front out of the yeah, you don't want to hurt it too bad. You're gonna hurt it, but you try not to hurt it so bad that you got to cut it off.
But you weren't worried about your own physical health, like what are you gonna?
Car, you're honestly, the decision about safety equipment is made long before you're ever in a crash. And that was one of the commitments I made to my team, and one of the commitments I made to my board at the church and my wife and all my friends, that, I have a lot of responsibility. I have a daughter. I have this church. I'm not 18 anymore. I'm not just, but I said I won't compromise on safety equipment at all. So I have probably the one mistake I made on this particular night is I didn't wear my head sock, because it was really muggy. And sometimes so that's how come my neck burned, because it was the only part of my skin that was exposed. And anyway, we go into the fence, and the car with the broken engine, his fuel cell ruptured. Basically, we have these fuel tanks that are custom made to withstand an impact. But that early in the run, a 22-gallon fuel cell, it probably had about 18 gallons of race gas in it. And when it hit, it kind of burst like like if you took this water bottle and squeezed it, eventually something has to give.
Right.
So the seam of the fuel cell burst, and I actually have photos of the fuel spraying through the air before it ignites. And then all of a sudden it ignites, and I get goosebumps just talking about it right now. Everything was fire. All I could see was black and orange and heat. And it was reaching up through my helmet, and I could feel it on my tongue. I could feel it in my nostrils. And all I knew to do was just to close my eyes and hold my breath, because I was done driving at that point, and pull the fire pin right down by my gear shifter. Everything in these race cars is designed for the size that you are, so I can reach everything without leaning forward. I reach down, I grab this pin, and I pull it. And I have this composite chemical that sucks the oxygen out of the air.
Oh.
So it kills the fire by sucking the oxygen away. And so I pull it, and immediately the fire goes out. But now I'm in kind of this foreign atmosphere, because I've been holding my breath and there's no air. And I'm like trying to get my breath, and I look down, and the oil fire is still going on. So I'm patting it out on my shoulder. You can actually see it in one of the videos that's online. And then I pull the window net, and I get up, and one of the guy that was just ahead of me, he had got out of his burning car and run over to see if I was okay. And he grabbed me up under the arms and drug me out onto the racetrack, which was amazing because I'm 6'4", about 225. And I think he's all of maybe 5'8", like 135. He's a real race car driver. I'm just a wannabe. I'm too big to be a real race car driver. But man, that night he picked me up and drug me right onto the track. And the track was on fire. The banners were on fire. 3 race cars were on fire. We were miraculously, all 3 of us had minor burns. I had some pretty serious ones, and I went to the hospital because they're so close to the arteries in your neck. Apparently they were worried about that, blood to my brain or something. And I said, I'm a race car driver. I have a lack of blood to my brain, because anybody in the right of their mind would never do this. But yeah, it was one of those moments where you really count your blessings, and you think about your family. One of the moments that really impacted me is I get led off the track by the 8 car. I get out of the 8 car. I hadn't considered the fact that some of my hair was burnt. My face was black because it was an oil fire. And my daughter, at the time, she was 9, and she comes running around the back of the ambulance, and she says, Daddy, I thought you died. Because they were in the stands, Melinda and her were, and she's crying. And I got down on my knees and I said, Daddy's okay. And she grabbed onto me. And here's the only phrase I can give you about it. I never felt love like that. It changed my life. And so,
Amen.
that season we'd had 3 wins and 7 straight podiums going into that race. We're racing for the championship, and it kind of all went up in smoke.
Now, do you win money from these?
Oh yeah.
Is it big money? Like the winner gets what?
It depends on the show. Sometimes $30,000, sometimes $1,500. Depends on the show.
Okay, I want the listeners and the viewers to hang on to the thought when you said the fire started coming up to your face.
Yeah.
Tell me, okay, people don't know this, or my viewers don't know that your father was a pastor, and your mother, they were pastors. They founded the church in '84, and then they were in the Alaska flight that crashed in 2000.
Right down in your neck of the woods.
I know exactly, and I remember that day. I remember when the plane crashed in that near Santa Barbara, or that kind of area.
Yeah, the memorial is in Ventura.
And the
plane actually impacted the water 8 miles off the coast, real close to the Catalina Islands. It was really neat. On the 20th anniversary, which was 2 years ago, we took our whole family, everybody that is still living, and my grandma, my mom and dad's grandkids, who they never met. They have 3 grandchildren, and they didn't get to meet them, obviously. And we took a boat. Alaskan Airlines put together this deal and took us out in a boat. And it's the first time I went out to the actual GPS coordinates. I was offered it many times over 20 years, but I just couldn't go. And when we got there to the spot, we were throwing flowers, and I would say no less than 100 dolphins surfaced and were jumping in the air. And it was just this really beautiful moment, standing there with my daughter. And my daughter, she always wants to know about her Grammy and her grandpa, and it just that day was the day that I won't ever forget. January 31st, 2000, 4:36 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the phone rang.
I remember that night. And I just want to say, okay, so your parents went to be with the Lord, and then the church asked you and Melinda, and you were still very young, to take over the leadership of the church. And what was that like? How old were you when that happened?
I was 29. We were we had kind of, with plane crashes, there's a really interesting media phenomena that I'm sure is even worse today. In 2000 there wasn't social media and all independent journalism, but immediately you're dealing with all of the press wanting a statement, papers, and all that. And so we'd kind of taken refuge at my mom and dad's house with a lot of family and friends while the recovery mission, at first it was a search and rescue. I found out about 11:30 at night that they were on the manifest, which was ironic, because I would learn a year later that my dad's passport expired while they were down there. And so,
Oh.
um, but they let him on the plane to come back home. And so we're taking refuge at the house. And Tuesday night, it was a Monday night, the plane crashed. Tuesday night, my parents, they're bored, they're friends, people that we prayed with a lot. They just pulled Melinda aside downstairs in my mom and dad's basement. They said, we just can't think of replacing your mom and dad with anybody but you and Melinda, Jeff. Like that, they would want that. That's what they would want. And
Mm.
what was it like? I'll answer it this way. I've said this a lot. I'd have done anything and said yes to anything to honor my mom and dad's legacy in that moment. It would take me a long time to finally go get some help to kind of process what all that meant, because the next 3 years were, while they were unbelievably incredible, they were also drastically dark. And I wouldn't talk about the darkness. I would only talk about the bright things as I was repressing my own grief. My sister was 16, so Melinda and I became like her parents. Moved into my mom and dad's. My mom and dad had a ranch too. That's where that thread comes from. So a lot of responsibilities. A church looking at me like, how's this 29-year-old going to replace his 54-year-old dad? And like I'm like, I can't replace them. And I don't even know if we're going to make it a year, but if you'll stick it out, we'll keep going. And, a lot of good happened. I would never, ever, make light of the beauty of those few years, but there was a lot of dark, and I didn't tell a lot of people about it. I wasn't really raised with the gospel that talked about suffering much. And so I was going to kind of will myself well through faith and good works and I meant well, but I would eventually find my way to a beautiful ranch in Colorado with a man named Dr. John Walker, and he was an angel. God sent me somebody to really help me find some solace and some peace and some healing. Not closure. I don't want closure. I built a bridge over that dark spot in my life, and I walk across that bridge every morning to the rest of my life. But sometimes I stop mid-span on some days, and I look into the dark because it makes me remember how far God brought me.
How was your marriage relationship with Melinda during that time, where it was nobody knew what was going on with you? I mean, the church thinks, "Oh, here's Happy Jeff encouraging us." What was your marriage like in that time?
The greatest gift that I will leave the world is my marriage. And that sounds crazy, but God knew what he was doing when he put me together with Melinda, and we went through that together, and we came alongside my sister together, and we pastored the church 22 years later to this day together. I wouldn't have it any other way. And she's a rock, and I could talk to her about the dark without her pressuring me to go get help. And what I mean by the dark is I could talk to her about sometimes the depression I would feel, sometimes the hurt, the pain, the loneliness. Oh my gosh, trying to navigate and lead a church without being able to call your dad who mentored you your whole life. Oh man, and I made a lot of mistakes. And so in the midst of making some of those mistakes, I created more loneliness because, as churches go, you lose friends and people transition. And I didn't handle loss well. Loss was, it was crippling. And so when I would lose certain relationships, it would just set me back. But Melinda, she was just a rock through all of that. I could talk to her about it without her judging me for it.
Well, now you were not born as a Christian. You weren't raised in your early years as a Christian.
No.
You said your grandma raised you. What was that like? Tell us more, because we want to bring it all together to the accident.
Yeah. So on June 3rd, 1978, my dad was arrested for 9 counts of theft and 2 counts of forgery in some white-collar crimes that involved the IRS audit of the company he worked for. He was a sales guy taking spiffs on the side, not recording them, and then not telling the truth about it. So at the end of the day, it was a Friday. I was 7 years old. The Snohomish County Sheriff showed up at the door and took my dad away. He was gone for the weekend. That night, at 10:30 at night, he rolled over in his jail cell and he said, "I'm 32 years old. I've made a mess of my life. And if you can help me through this," he's praying, "I will serve you." And I don't even know what that means. And my dad, he often wouldn't tell this in his own testimony. He'd tell it privately to close friends because he just didn't want people to think it was over the top. He actually felt a hand touch him on the calf and there was nobody around. And he knew that it was Jesus. And at 11:45, my mom was a super spiritual person. She was a social worker, drug and alcohol rehab, helped a lot of people, but she was into Eastern religion. She had like mantras and they do like meditation in the field, and contractors would, I don't know if you know what water witching is, but it's where you go find where water is in the ground, and she could do that. And people would pay her money in the 70s to do that. My mom was super eclectic, bit new age, taught me transcendental meditation when I was like 5 and 6 years old. And she just was into that stuff. Well, her husband is in a jail cell. I'm asleep in the next room. I'm 7. And she gets on her knees and she looks to heaven and she says, "If you are really real, I need you in my life right now." And she says that what she experienced in that minute was something that no other thing that she chased could give her. And that was peace. She had peace. And so my mom and dad gave their lives to Christ on the same night in different places, never hearing the gospel preached. I had a great grandfather that was an itinerant preacher in Methodist movement, but it kind of skipped a generation with my dad's parents. And so they were just kind of brand new. And so then on Monday, my mom takes bail. My dad, they meet each other in the lobby. My dad's headed up to get fingerprinted. And he says, "I'll come home, get my things, because I assume we're through. But before I do that, I need to tell you something happened to me in here." And she said, "Is it Jesus?" And he was like shocked. He's like, "It is." And she said, "Me too." And in that moment, they embraced. And my mom and dad, though they had some challenges to come out of that situation, they were married the rest of their lives. I mean, they died together on that plane, holding each other. I know they did. And so, when my dad, I don't know if you remember in the 70s, the band, the Tower of Power.
Okay, yeah, I remember them, yes.
Disco Inferno.
Yeah.
So my dad and mom were really good friends with one of their tour managers. And so they would go on tour. When Tower of Power would come to Seattle, my mom and dad would go party with them. And so I was the kid at 5, 6, 7 years old that would wake up on Saturday morning and not know who all the people were that were sleeping in our house. And so all of a sudden they get saved. We end up going to this Baptist church. I'll just tell you this. Jesus Christ changed the trajectory of my life on that day. I do not know where I would be today. I don't know what the promises would have amounted to had that day not happened when I was a 7-year-old boy.
But when you were little, did they raise you in that Eastern religion? Them kind of.
Yeah, my mom did. Yeah. In fact, it's funny because she really did teach me transcendental meditation. I really experienced whatever that is when I was a boy. And I find it interesting sometimes, like if I go into a season of, where I'm practicing the disciplines, whether it's a season of where I'm being silent for a day or fasting for a day or praying for a day or, getting away in nature and seeking God. It's very interesting that I find some of the same disciplines are important that my mom taught me when I was a boy and that stuff. So, yeah.
You mentioned once to me about this. You felt this demonic like trying to kill you, trying. That fire happened in that car. You felt there was just a demonic influence on you or something. Tell us about
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I would say it this way. Prior to Christ, my first experience with something that was, people would call it paranormal today. I know what it is today. I was a boy. My mom's mom was adopted, and her birth certificate was blotted out. But she was very, very dark complected. And then my grandfather, his parents were Lakota Sioux, and so lots of ties to Native American heritage. So growing up, when I would go to my grandparents' house, there'd be, masks, and they had these things called fetishes where they were little animals, and my grandma would feed them, and she'd teach me all about this. And one time coming back to her house, I come around a corner and I have an encounter with just a very, very dark presence. And my grandfather made light of it. As we walked around the house, he'd open the closet. Is it in here? He'd close the closet. He'd look under the bed. Is it down here? But I felt as though, that component was what when Christ saved my mom and dad. And then ultimately, about 7 months later, I asked my mom while I was laying in bed, I asked my mom, I'm like, how do I know if Jesus is in my heart as a boy? And so I gave my life to, and I always say I gave my heart to him when I was 8 because I just had a birthday, but he saved my life when I was 19. And that was the moment where I was like, I knew I was in need of salvation. And I knew that if I didn't turn to Jesus at this moment, that dark component of my story was going to just rule the day. And, the Bible tells us that the darkness cannot comprehend the light. And the light of Christ is the most powerful light in the world. And so there's nothing that we go through that's so dark that the light of Christ doesn't illuminate our path before us.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Someone was asking, Michael was asking, he said, do you use race car analogies in your sermon teaching?
Yeah, I do. When I first started, probably way too much. People are like, "Could we please have a different story?" So yeah, but for sure, racing has been a incredible place for me to just be Jeff. But some people say when I had a crew chief one time, and he'd always used to say, I need you to not be a pastor in the car. I need you to put that helmet on and go put a bumper to somebody, and being a pastor, it's not something I just take off. It's not a hat I take off. It's who I am. And so I pastor a lot of people in the racing world. And in fact, I just celebrated yesterday, I believe it was his 9th anniversary getting saved. A guy that raced out there for years and years and still does. And he texted me yesterday and he said, I just want to honor you on this day. 9 years ago today, you led me to Christ. And I have lots of stories like that. So those are the stories that make it into the messages, not so much, I was going 105 miles an hour and I crashed into the fence, I try to leave those ones out.
What's the funniest thing that happened to you, either on the pulpit or on a racetrack, if you remember any?
Yeah, I think probably some of the funnier things that happen on the one time, they're funny now, but they're not funny in the moment, and that's what makes them funny. So our steering wheels come on and off because you can't get, there's no adjustable seat. Everything's welded and bolted together. So you take the steering wheel off to get in the car, and it's the very last, after you put your helmet on and get your belts done, very last thing you do is you put the steering wheel back on. So I put the steering wheel on, and I go out for practice, and we go green, and I come off a turn 2, and the steering wheel comes off. Now, our cars are designed to go left. They have what's called caster in them, and all cars have caster, but we have a caster split. So we have more caster in the left side than in the right side. So when you let go of the wheel, the car turns left on its own. It's not an
Oh,
alignment issue. That's how it's made to. So immediately the wheel comes off and the car, we're wrecking. We are wrecking, Nazareth. We're wrecking. We're going to smash. And I don't know. I just went and I pushed it forward and it went back on. And I was able to save it. And I got all wiggly down the backstretch. And so that's probably one of the biggest oh no moments that turned out okay that I look back on and I laugh about it. Probably one of my favorite racing stories that is I got tangled up with this guy and I crashed hard with sadly with a 5-race-old race car and I destroyed it. And the next day, there's this thing about racers. We never forget who's done us wrong. And we try not to remember when we did wrong.
okay.
You short-term memory when you do wrong. But
That's a Christian thing, isn't it? No?
Yeah.
In church? Okay.
So this guy who I candidly, I had to love him with the love of Jesus because I didn't really like him. He wrecks me hard. The next day I'm at the track and I mean, my car's junk, but I'm helping out another guy. Because I love being around the sport. And he comes walking up to me and he's got a hot dog and it's covered in mustard. And he sticks it like right up to my face and he says, "Hey, did I get into you last night?" And I step back and I'm like, "Get into me? My car is destroyed." I actually compressed my C4, C5 disc. And so I couldn't even stand up straight. And I'm like, "Get into me." So it was one of those moments where I had to turn and walk away laughing, but I wanted to fight. Because that's probably the thing that happens to me more is that there is a racer inside of me, even though, I'm trying to operate in the gifts of the Spirit at all times.
Sure.
Sometimes I climb out of the car and I want to shove my steering wheel through people's teeth. And I have to calm that down.
Do you feel like you have to have testosterone activities or no? If you're
I
not
have to have
racing,
what activities?
yeah, testosterone, like you gotta do something dangerous. You have to do something dangerous or no?
I don't feel like I have to. Again, I feel like I just like to do things that make me feel. I think that's I would never be able to experience what I've experienced without the numbness of the years of losing my mom and dad and really trying to find my way. And so when I do things now, I try to choose things that aren't just about adrenaline or testosterone. They're not a hormonal thing as much as they are. I want to feel alive. I want to have, in that race car, if I want to, I can be on the edge. It's sliding around and there's just something super satisfying about the preparation in the shop and then executing on the track and then getting, pastoring, while it's so hands-on, there's another part of it that's so like you make a lot of preparation, but you don't see results for a long time. Racing gives me immediate feedback. I set the car up on Friday night. I race it on Saturday night. We either suck or we win, somewhere in between there. I get immediate feedback and I'm like, okay, this is what we go do next week. And there's something about that I really enjoy. Really enjoy that.
Now, what do you say to people who are afraid to take chances? They're afraid to, I don't know. And then maybe they justify it biblically. Oh, I shouldn't. Maybe God doesn't want me to do this or that. What do you tell them?
Well, I think everybody has to decide, where the scale from 1 to 10, where they bow out, I call it in my world, I call it resign with dignity. Like you don't have to do it, but man, if it's in your heart to do, man, it's so overused, but I do think, man, we're only young one time, and I'm not gonna be able to race forever. I've probably got a couple more years in me and a couple more races left in me. I brought my daughter. This is a great story. I brought my daughter out to the shop, probably my most disappointing father-daughter talk in the shop. And I said, okay, babe, you're 12. I can get you a race car. Come race with daddy. And she says, Dad, I'm on a horse. So for the next little bit, I'm kind of being a horse dad and
Okay.
taking care of her. I want to see her dreams come true. But I can't race forever. So let's, we're not young forever. We can't do the things we love all our life in the way that we can do them now. So what I tell people is I tell them, don't wait for the conditions to be right, man. Just prepare well and go do what you're called to do.
I just have a question way out of left field, have nothing to do with that. But you said the transcend meditation. What is it called?
The transcendental meditation.
Yeah,
I can't believe we're talking.
I can't even say it.
I can't believe we're talking about this.
No, and then there's the meditation, the biblical meditation when we're. But what is the difference between the two? I'm just for my own sake.
Source.
The what?
The
source. Okay.
The source. Biblical meditation, the focus is on the Holy Spirit. The focus is on filling yourself with more of Christ, more of the Holy Spirit. Transcendental meditation, at least how my mom taught me when I don't remember lots of it, but when I was 5 or 6, was emptying. It's like becoming less of yourself. And so the source ultimately is the difference maker.
Okay. Now, Washington State, as we know it, even though I live in California, it's a little bit different. I have a lot of, I have several people who watch the show and listen to it are from Washington State, and I hope if they don't have a church home, Monroe, the Rock Church would be their new home. But what I'm saying, how do you reach people in Washington State, people who are like in that mentality, like how do you
Yeah. I think that you reach people, like if we're talking about reaching people that are far from God and maybe on different paths, as far as like they're spiritual, but they're not necessarily, the source isn't Jesus, the source isn't the Bible, the source isn't Holy Spirit. Ultimately, I think it begins like everything else. It begins with relationship, and I find that in my journey. I mean, one of the funniest parts of getting that text yesterday, celebrating with his name's Steve, his 9-year anniversary getting saved, is that the backstory of why he got saved is his son was killed, and I did his memorial, and I walked into this room with like 1,000 people, and the memorial song was the band Disturbed. I don't know if you've heard them, but super dark and dark, hard chords, and I'm like, when I go into a memorial, I've done so many of them, and I want to bring the light into the darkness of the situation. And I literally stood there in the front row, and I'm like, man, this atmosphere is definitely, we're not having a memorial service in a church. And yet he asked me to do it. And so I'm like, I want to honor his son, and I want to somehow pierce the darkness here and with what I bring. And I use that as an example to say, that's how we reach people. We don't reach people by staying in the safety of the church walls, and that might be saying it too lightly, but we gotta go into the darkness. Like I describe it like this: people are in the dark, whether it's oppression, depression, frustration, loss, economic, could be medical, it could be whatever, and the darkness it's a labyrinth, and there is no light. I've been there. I've been there when that plane crashed, and you kind of walk along through life, and you bump into people down there, and sometimes you walk together in the dark, and sometimes you sit down and you just wait a while. And I like to look at it like that with that metaphor, is that God's equipped me to go into the dark, to find people and to help lead them out when they want to walk out.
Mm.
And so that's, I would say, how I would describe how I reach people. I try to get into the dark with them because I know the way out, because I've been in some situations, even as a pastor, even as a Christian, that it was incredibly dark. And it was not dark just for a day, it was dark for a long season. And the
Mm.
Lord helped lead me out. And so I don't even know if it's an appropriate word, but I like to call them dark walkers. I try to raise up a lot of dark walkers to go into the dark places of society and find the people that actually want to walk out. Because there's a
Mm.
lot of people that have hung their coat on whether it's Eastern religion or agnosticism or atheism or whatever, and they want to walk out, but they don't know the way. And they need people that carry the light to go into the dark and lead them out.
Amen. You wrote a book a year and a half ago, and or 2 years
A
ago,
little
and
while ago, I think
little what? It's
2014.
called Revved,
The
and then
Rev
you
Life.
Revved Life, and then the next book is coming out in about a year or so.
It
I'll be
is.
following up. Tell us about Revved Life. What was that
The
about?
Rev Life is really it's kind of an introduction to my journey into racing and just my journey into it's a bit autobiographical, but at the same time, I give a lot of soul winning principles in there, things like you just asked, um, to where how, reaching people at a racetrack. Why would we invest there? Well, I would invest there because there's a lot of people there. I would say that the church at the racetrack's larger than the one that comes on Sunday morning because I pastor a lot of people that have never given a tithe to the church or been in a worship service. But when I see them in town, I'm their pastor. So the
That's
Rev
amazing.
Life is about that journey.
Wonderful. I had the pleasure of performing in Talladega, and also I
Oh yeah,
performed for I performed at the Las Vegas racetracks. I
yeah.
did my comedy and stuff. But so it's so neat. But what is the new book gonna be about?
The new book is about some of that stuff I just talked about right there. The new book is about the working title is Present Darkness. The working title is that there's a lot of people, our humanity right now, globally, is in the dark and we're tearing each other apart. And this book is about how do we go in to that dark labyrinth and how do we help people find their way out? Kind of what I talked about just a moment ago. That's the principle of what it's about. It begins, I'm actually writing it as a 3-act script with a villain, a protagonist, and act one, act two, act three. And so it actually begins with the fire crash of 2017.
Wow. Now, two quick questions before we let you go. I know you're very busy. The number one, how can people get a hold of you for speaking engagements, for reaching out to you, and all that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So my handle everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, um, is at Nitrous. So Knighthrous. And I monitor Instagram probably more than any of them, or you can just contact info at trclife.com.
trclife.org. .com?
Dot com.
TRC.
Yep.
That, yeah.
Info at
TR,
trclife.com
the
is
Rock
another way you could
Church
just,
stands for
yeah,
the Rock Church Life.
correct.
Okay. There's someone watching and someone listening are walking through the dark right now. They're
Mm,
Christians, but they're having this dark depression times and stuff.
yeah.
What would you say to even help them come out of it or encourage them through it? Take a few minutes to just encourage them through that or talk to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think probably the most powerful scripture that somebody shared with me to finally put a capstone on my battle. I've been free from that for like almost 10 years now. I carried it for a long time. Is Zephaniah 3:17. And the Bible says right there that God cares for you so much he sings songs over you. Isaiah
Wow.
61 says that he delights in you. The story of the prodigal son, I love that we talk about the son, but I like thinking about the father, how he went to the edge of town every day looking for his son to return. And then you have the John story of the restoration of Peter. In all things and in all circumstances, the darkness that you're going through, it cannot comprehend the light of Christ. It cannot comprehend the light. And a lot of times in the dark, we think that God is frustrated with us, or that he's angry with us, or that that somehow we're in this position because we're not doing it right. And that, my friend, could not be any further from the truth. He delights in who you are. He gets into the darkness with you. When you begin to embrace that he's with you in it, you'll begin to follow him out of it. But a lot of times we think like words like depression, they're bad words. We can't talk about those words. God doesn't. But God is in that right next to you. And the second that we embrace that he's there, we walk out of it. And my encouragement to you is to just keep walking. Don't quit walking. Even when it's dark, feel your way along those cavern walls. And on the days that you can't walk, just sit down. Like a lot of times we think that if every day is not progress from where I've been to where I'm supposed to be, then somehow I'm failing at getting well, getting healthy, overcoming. And that's not the truth. Like the reality is that in my own healing, in my own journey, and some days I just sat down and did nothing. And those were the healthiest days to put in perspective. And then on other days, I keep moving. And if you keep moving and you keep seeking the Lord, I promise that there will be a light that will shine like the light at the end of a tunnel. And it'll start. That's the thing, is that the second that you turn that light on in a dark room, everything is revealed. And the second that glimmer of light, the light of Christ, comes into your life, he reveals everything. And you just follow that light right to him.
Amen. That's powerful. That's powerful. Pastor Jeff, thank you so much.
Nazareth, I'm delighted to be a part of this. And I just love you, and to everybody who, tunes into you from all the way back, I believe in 2004, 2005, when you first came. And here we are in 2022. You've been
twice already this year with you.
Twice this year. I want to do it again too. It never gets old. You're a blast. You're fun, and I appreciate your friendship.
What did you do with the horses that you sold? You sold them with the property?
No, we still have the horses. My daughter has horses.
How many horses do you guys have?
We have 4 horses.
Okay, you don't want to sell one, right?
Not right now.
Okay.
Oh, you want a horse? You want me to deliver it?
I'll pick it up.
I'll ride to LA and put it in your backyard.
Awesome. Well, love you so much, Pastor Jeff. Say my love to Melinda and your daughter. Thank you for your time. What a wonderful stories. God bless you.
Sir. All right.
All right, guys. And thank you so much for watching and listening to us. If you want more of this, you can always go to the laughterforallpodcast.com, laughterforallpodcast.com. Also, it's on Facebook. Also, every weeknight, except for Tuesday, because we do the podcast, we have the Live with Naz show where you can laugh with us for an hour and be encouraged and have people pray for you, like get your prayer requests and then pray for you the next day or the day after and all that. But it's a funny 1 hour at 8:30 p.m. Pacific time where you can join us. Tomorrow will be show number 439. That's how long we've been with you guys. And we know a lot of people who are watching and listening and all that. They've had depressions and anxiety. And what you heard today from Pastor Jeff is really powerful to be able to walk you throughout this. So if you know someone who's hurting, someone who's depressed, someone who's anxious, please share this podcast with them. Share this podcast with them. If you know someone who think they're going too slow on the freeway, share this podcast with them. They need to speed it up. Okay, guys, I love you. Thank you so much for watching and have a great night. Thank you.